are deciding, because you've written some other another series as well, when you're as well as a standalone, when you're looking at writing either a standalone or a series novel, how do you typically determine which is which?
About which one to write next?
Right, yeah, well, or if you're writing what I think Tommy Greenwald called his premise novel, the first book in a series, when do you know if the first book is a standalone novel or if it's going to be the beginning of a series?
Yeah, that's a good question. The only standalone I've written is actually I've written one novel for adults under a pen name, and that's the only one just as a to try to write that way. So the other books for the kids have both been series, and I think the second series called Brother Wars, it actually started as a couple short stories. So I had started having just a little bit of a dabble to see, is this something that I think would be interesting? And then as I got a little bit more along the line, I realized it's another fun way to do it. So I break it up a little bit. The Brother Wars series is actually written in the first person versus the mystery series is in the third person. So it's a different style of writing. It tells the story from a little bit different perspective. It frees me up a little bit. As much as I love the Virginia history, it does box you into being in Virginia and doing the historical pieces. So like in Brother Wars, it's a little bit more open-ended. They can just kind of have independent adventures. They can be in different places like New York City or different spots, and it allows me to pull in different places that I've been or that I might find fun to talk about.
So how do you market Brother Wars differently than from the Virginia Mysteries, since you don't have the same built-in educational push, I assume?
Yeah, so I think it definitely hasn't had the same level of uptick as the mystery series has, and first that's one of those reasons. But I think it's nice. It's been easier to get adoption to that because I've already had the success of the mystery series. So when I'm at schools or if I'm at a book signing or something, I'll have all the books there, and then if kids haven't read one, the new series, it's this is something else that you can see, or if you've already read all the mysteries. Again, with Amazon and things, it shows you your author page and also bots and all that. So there is some carryover, and even with advertising on Amazon and that I'm doing more of, which I'm sure we'll talk about. All those things are just kind of techniques to kind of bring it along, but it's always easier if you have something established to then have secondary pieces, I think, do better. But it definitely doesn't do as well as the mystery series, but I think I just put the third book out a couple months ago, so it kind of gradually takes hold. And I think that's one of the things about independent publishing that's a little bit different than your traditional path, is that when a big publisher is putting out a new book, obviously the normal way to do it is it comes out in hardcover, and that big release push and all that going on at the bookstores and all the efforts when it's in the original hardback release. And I actually have all my books also available in hardback, but at the same time, I think you have the luxury of a little bit more of a slow build over time. So sometimes that first month may not be very great, which would be a big problem if you were traditionally published, but it allows you to kind of slowly get adoption. As more people find out about it, then it kind of, again, snowballs as you go along. So, I'm seeing more uptick even in like my first book of the mystery series today, which came out, which is almost 6 years old, than I did when it came out 6 years ago, or even 3 or 4 years ago. So sometimes that adoption, and that's the benefit of writing a series, I think, is that when someone latches onto something, they love the fact that there's more behind it to be able to look at. If I like this book, then there's 6 more books that I can read, or 2 more books, depending on which series you're talking about, which is a good thing.
Yeah, no, I've talked with some voracious readers that if they find out a novel's a standalone, I'm less interested. Let me get excited and let me really dig in. What have you got for me?
Yeah, and I think if you focus on really building the series and really cross promoting, like I mentioned, the fact that I do have one book for adults, which I like a lot, and people that have read it have enjoyed it, but it really hasn't sold very many copies at all, and I've kind of pulled back from doing a lot of advertising. And it's funny because I look at the techniques and the tactics I've used for the middle grade pieces, and one of the reasons that it started to do better is because there's more books and it's a series and things are happening. And none of those things exist for the adult book, and I think that has a big reason behind why it hasn't had the same uptick. I think down the road, I'd love to write some more in the years ahead, and probably after I get another couple books to go with it, or even if it's not in the same series, just to say that in this author, there's other books that you could read if you like this book. I think that will lend itself to having more adoption, even if it's a few years from now. I think the great thing, books aren't going anywhere, and especially with the fact that they're available online now, it's not like in the past where if you don't get those sales right away, 2 years from now you might not be able to find it. They're going to be there, which is great. So try not to get too worried about it right away. If you don't sell a lot of books in the first 3 months, there's plenty of time, and you can always come up with new strategies for your backlist and find ways to get it going maybe down the road.
Yes, one of the many nice things about indie publishing is I know traditionally publishing varies a little bit from house to house, but typically with bookstores you have about a 6-month window, sometimes less, where let's get it done now. That determines whether or not you get a second or third printing, how many books are going to be available, how long the ebook is going to continue to be promoted, versus if it's your book, it's your IP. There is no backlist. That is available forever right there at the front for that new crop of readers every couple of years to come in. And I'm assuming when I read the Virginia Mysteries, I wouldn't go so far as to call them completely timeless, but they're not set so specific that they couldn't be picked up today and, oh, this is happening now or very soon, right?
Yeah, that's the way I try to do it. There's some instances, even as they get a little bit older, you almost can't write a story without having the kids have some technology and be texting or different things. But I try not to make that the main focus of the story, so that it has a little bit of that, like you said, that timeless feel. I think even with the covers, sometimes one of my ideas is to make them a little bit Hardy Boy-esque, so that when the parents or grandparents are buying them, it kind of pulls back a little nostalgia to say, oh, this is something that kind of reminds me of maybe something that I read, but then also making them exciting enough so that today's kids are still going to be interested in getting them. So yeah, I think the more you can make them, it may not be forever evergreen, but there's an evergreen nature to books, and having them there that hopefully in 5 or 10 years they'll be just as interesting for kids as they are today.
That's smart, because there you are marketing not just to the kids, but to the people who may ultimately be some of the decision makers along the way, because the grandparents and the parents that have the money that can maybe buy the book. So if you're roping them in as well, that's just smart.
Yeah, and that's important. I mean, you hear that talked about a lot, as particularly at this age group, is that the kids, if you're trying to sell to a 10-year-old or that's your reader, your target reader, they're not the ones buying it unless they happen to be in the bookstore looking at the shelves or looking over their parents' shoulder on Amazon. So you have to find a way to both get them excited about it, and there's a lot of ways you can do that separately, but also making it something that the parents are going to be interested in, attracted to, and get them to make the purchase. And then hopefully when the kid starts reading it, they're going to be enjoying it as well.